These gentlemen, we started a year ago on this about discussion of bringing together the process of law enforcement and theft and education. And we did this in a meeting in Wall, and it was pretty poorly responded to. Shortly thereafter, we went to the lodge for your annual, the conference, and we educated a little more, both each other's, and since this time, things have improved, and I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to get off the stage here. I'm going to go get a drink of water. I'm going to let you guys discuss what's happened. Fred wrote a letter to the editor, which is in our magazine. I'm going to let him talk about that, and have the floor, boys.
Okay, thanks, Doris. Okay, my name is Fred Lamb from Butte County Sheriff. I've been sheriff in Butte County for 24 years now. I've been in law enforcement in Butte County since 1990. Ag's a big background in my family. My brand that I have right now, my grandfather got that brand when he was homestead on a ranch west of Buffalo. So it's been in our family a long time. Brands mean a lot, and it's a legacy. And being in law enforcement, I look at the vulnerability that producers have nowadays. You know, every year I always get a little chuckle out of this. We get range lammers up right at the very north end of our county, and we'll always get some do-gooder that sees a lamb out there in the sagebrush and run out and get it. And they'll drive into Belle Fourche and they'll have this little lamb that's undocked and it's pretty fresh, and they just think it was abandoned out there, but it's not. And you know how that is, trying to get it mothered back up. It doesn't work too well. Had some people unloading some cattle in a summer pasture, and a van stopped and brought them one of the little lambs they found this year that said that it was just abandoned out there, standing down there along the fence. So those kind of things happen almost every year. But when you look at the big picture of what a baby calf can bring now, it was pretty amazing to me back when they brought a couple $100. Now they're bringing a couple $1,000, unbranded and real fresh. So there is a lot of vulnerability in livestock producers out there, and just the open ranges that we operate in. I can say that we started working with the brand boards just for quite a few years ago, and I'm sure a lot of you know Shorty Overberg, and you know I always got along with Shorty. I've known him for a long time, and the things that Shorty, he would maybe give you a call if somebody reported something to him, and because he had always asked them, well, did you report it to the sheriff? Well, they didn't know they had to. They just reported to the livestock investigator. So I think over the years, we've just decided that we need to start developing a better line of communication with the producers and with, obviously, some of the investigators. So a couple years ago, when a few hot topics were going on, we asked the brand board, we asked the stock growers and a few other organizations to come to our spring meeting. And it was kind of ironic that when they all came in there, they kind of huddled in their groups like most would, and wasn't a lot said. But by the end of this meeting, there's a lot of communication got opened up, and I think we started to build some bridges. And following that, we decided one of the best things that we can do from a law enforcement standpoint is, because we have some real broken problems in our state from a law enforcement standpoint. We have laws out here that are very good, and they protect the producers, and they protect the laws around the brand and around the livestock. But as soon as you cross that Missouri River, all bets are off. They aren't protected anymore. So that's where some of the vulnerability and some of the brokenness comes from. Some of it's the reservations that are sitting right on our state borders. There's a lot of vulnerability there too. Lack of inspection and sovereign nation rules. So we decided that we would start working with these organizations and not only help them, but help educate us. And so last year we started with cross-training and doing some cross-training with the investigators and law enforcement. And this spring at our spring conference, we actually had the Highway Patrol training, some of the training committee members from the Highway Patrol. We've got a lot of county agencies, even city agencies that are very involved. Pennington County hosted a training last year. I'm hosting a training in Butte County. I'll invite Montana and North Dakota, and I'll reach out to North Dakota too, because we're just in that corner of the state and we have a couple livestock auctions real close. But having the highway patrol, having all of our sheriff's deputies have some basic training to start with just some of the inspection things. We get a lot of trucks that come through our country and they might load in Idaho and they might be going to Iowa, but that's what we think. There could be a lot more stuff going on in between. I know that Montana and Wyoming have full-time livestock investigators. It's a division. They have arrest powers and they're pretty effective, but they cover a whole state. You know, they've got a lot of officers that take care of that. As I said, our problem is that we only really have the western part of the state that we can do a lot of this work in. And I commend some of our legislators. I know Jana tried to get a bill to do a statewide inspection. I think it's going to be a hard sell, but I think with the right governor in place, if we get Governor Roden back in there, I think that with that momentum and I think the vulnerability of what that we can really identify, I think if nothing else, we can at least start getting an inspection when they're in that part of the state, even if it isn't a brand that they're required to do. But we should be able to start getting some more, I guess, protection is the best way I can put it, of critters coming through our state, and try and enforce some of that. And I think a lot of our problems too, I think, is on the initial, maybe you're missing 10 or 12 head. I'm going to kind of turn this over to Pat in a couple minutes, but just building a foundation on getting stuff reported early. I think that's a key thing. So many of us are independent out there, and you take that on and you think, well, I'm not going to call anybody. I'm just going to start, I'll do a little look and I'll call the neighbors, and maybe somebody's hunting coyotes, I can have them check some draws for me or whatever. But the sooner we, as your local sheriff, can start a base of investigation and look into some things, it's going to help you farther down the line. And I'll say that some of you producers are starting to put insurance on there, and inevitably, if you're going to do an insurance claim, they're going to want a law enforcement report back on it. So the earlier you can get it reported to us, let us start. I mean, sometimes people might know something in August, but they really won't figure the number up until they wean or something like that. But you know, you're talking 2 months, and it might have been 2 or 3 weeks when you first noticed it, and there may have been some things we could have looked into. But with that, I'll turn this over to Pat and let him talk a little bit. Thank you.
Can you hear me? All right. Well, he pretty much said it all, so I think we're done. I'm out. No. My name is Pat West. I'm the Meade County Sheriff. I was elected about 4 years ago, so I've only been sheriff about 4 years. Learned a lot from this guy. My prior life, I worked for the Division of Criminal Investigation. The Attorney General, Marty Jackley, was my boss for about 10 years. During that time frame, I investigated a few cattle theft cases as a DCI agent. Recognized a lot of the difficulties when it comes to investigating those types of cases, due to the fact that a lot of times it's misrepresentation, delay in reporting, things like that, and they're tough cases to work. I'm excited for the fact of the governor kind of bringing together, you know, the brand board and the sheriffs and law enforcement, and kind of helping us out to, you know, make a plan for the future to try to figure out how we can solve some of these cases. Excited to have Corey on the board. He and I actually exchanged elbows back in high school days. He went to Midland and I went to Phillip. Is he in here? Is he in this room? I'm going to tell you a secret. I played football at Black Hills State, and Corey and I are about the same age. And you guys don't know this, but Corey was the mascot for the Black Hills State Yellow Jackets. The guy that ran around in the B outfit, that was Corey. So you have to give him some shit when you see him. So I digress. But anyway, back to what we're trying to do here. Fred and I got together here right when I started as sheriff, because the very first cattle theft that I ended up landing in my lap as the sheriff was, we had 300 head of cows that were missing out of south of Faith. And we tracked it down, they ended up being sold down in Kansas. But it was a big theft case. And it was one of those things that kind of opened my eyes on how bad that this can get. So Fred and I got together, we started talking to the state brand board and came up with some ideas as far as training for our deputies, training for the investigators, so that we could get on the same page. Adam, who's one of the part-time investigators, has done a couple trainings for us, which I've attended. It's been well received by the deputies, and I think it's extremely important that that continues. You know, I heard a lot of you, what Doris said, the brand investigators don't really have any arrest authority. And they need to have some sort of a hammer to be able to drop. Otherwise, they have to rely on the DCI to come in and help, or the sheriffs to come in and help. And we need to work on how we can fix that, whether it continues with the DCI or somehow we swear them in as deputies, when it comes to investigations and things like that. So I'm open to suggestions on that. Fred and I have briefly talked about it a little bit to try to help with that. But these last 2 years, we have gained a lot of knowledge, and our relationships have kind of developed this to where I think we're making progress. We just need to keep doing it. Fred talked about one of the biggest problems with some of these cattle theft cases is just the delay. You put cattle out in a pasture and you don't check on them for a month, 2 months, sometimes all summer, and you go back and you're short some head. And it's hard for us to find that hot trail when it's been cold for so long, to be able to investigate that stuff. So what else are we going to talk about?
Been covered, I suppose. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions? I know, I think Doris had a couple questions for us, but, there you are. Do you have any questions or no? No, nothing? So yeah, pretty straightforward. Hopefully we're going to be able to have you guys back at the conference and continue that relationship, building that relationship and working on that. I really like the training. A lot of the things that people don't understand. For example, I tell my deputies at night, if they're out patrolling at night and they see a horse trailer or a big cattle truck or whatever in an area which doesn't, in the middle of the night they're moving, I get it, sometimes you move cattle, we cannot just pull them over to check on them. We got to have a reason to pull somebody over, whether it be careless driving, a tail light out, a headlight out, whatever it might be. We can't just pull them over and say, hey, what are you doing? But what we can do, I'm a big proactive guy. What we can do is run a license plate, and it's in our computer system. So later on, if we have some cattle or something that's missing in that area, we can go back and at least have a starting point on who may have taken what and start asking some questions. But we try to stay proactive, try to do the best that we can to identify. But again, catching somebody in the act is pretty tough. So it's always reactive more than it is proactive.
So I'd like to comment. It was these two gentlemen that really approached us and our brand committee, and we started having these conversations of what can we do, how can we do it, and through our membership, we've gotten a lot of response. So we thank you for that. So a question for you is, before this all started, before this relationship began, were you given much for Brandon theft? Did you receive a lot of calls, and how did your, deputies, how did they all respond to this?
Well, in my experience, we would usually get a call from, as I stated earlier, maybe Shorty Zoverberg or someone within his capacity with the state brand investigations or brand, well, those investigators, trying to think a couple of names of the other guys that worked with him, but they would give us information about maybe a theft that was reported within our county. And I think the mindset was that they would report it to the brand board. And usually the first question was, did you report to your sheriffs? Because we wouldn't have the report. We usually got it from the brand investigator. Sometimes we would get the hot sheet, and we still get the hot sheet now too. And just sometimes there's a delay on it. And still to this day, sometimes there'll be a missing cattle because it's missing, stolen or missing in our area that we didn't have any information on until we got the hot sheet. So, I mean, that's kind of the way it went for a while. I think us as sheriffs, I think just building relationships with the people in our community and just every chance we get trying to educate the people that we serve to make that first call to us. And then they can go through that process of reporting it to the brand board, but that's part of what we'll do too. And just keeping that line of communication open.
The sooner the better, because you put wheels under those four-legged creatures and they're gone. And which direction they go, you don't know. So the call needs to come in as quickly as possible to get things started. So do you feel that you mentioned a few names there in the brand office. When there was a chief brand inspector, do you feel that one person where, I mean, no problem, we have 4 district supervisors, but they kind of maintain their districts. Are you receiving more information or less information, or do you feel that should still come from the state office, or do you think that, where do you sitting on that? How can we help you?
Well, I think our regional people that, I think the biggest takeaway we can do is just continue these trainings and have face-to-face visits with these people, whether it's through training or just these meetings, so that we're comfortable in talking with each other. I mean, if somebody that's over in my area can make a phone call to me because they've got this report, that's a lot better because it eliminates that time that would have to go through to get warehoused back out of Pierre or out of a state office. So just keeping that communication open and local, at least in a region, I think is very beneficial. And I think that's starting to build, and I think it's going to just continue to get better.
Yeah, Doris, the communication has definitely improved a lot. Okay. I still feel like there's a little bit of delay, especially if the brand board gets the initial report. And I don't know if it's just paperwork or timing or whatever. You guys talking about not cashing checks. I have a heck of a time getting my own people to sign their timesheet so they get paid, but for whatever reason, they forget that. But I'm with Fred. If, the initial report comes in to the sheriff or whatever, we can get it assigned to an investigator. We definitely call the brand board or vice versa. It doesn't matter to us as long as it gets reported quickly and we can jump on it as soon as we can. So.
Okay. Well, unless you guys have something else, we appreciate everything you do. The Stock Growers will continue to keep this moving forward. Come to us whenever you need something, and we're happy to work with you. Give them a round of applause, please.